right, Peter. This is our square foot garden, right?
Yeah, it is. It looks kind of sad because it froze 2 nights ago, and so it's all dead now.
All right. Well,
or at least all the summer stuff.
Well, tell us this. How did it do this year?
I thought it did really good.
Okay.
The square foot garden is a concept that Mel Bartholomew came up with, and if you do his method exactly, there's special soil blends and fertilizing and things like that you do.
Okay.
I didn't do a special soil blend here. I just used the soil that we had in the garden, which had a lot of compost in it.
It's good soil.
So yeah, it was good soil. And so I don't know if that's going to affect what actually came out of here this year, but we did get a lot. So it was very high density. It's 4 feet by 8 feet. We had 32 squares in the square foot garden. Each square gets a certain number of plants planted in it. So larger plants, you're going to plant one. So like for instance, a pepper. Smaller plants, you can plant multiples. So for instance, at one point here in the spring, we had 16 onions in one of the squares. We had 2 squares of them, so we had 32 onions. You know, 4 lettuces or things like that. So after doing this for a year, there's some interesting things that I think we've learned.
Let's hear that.
So I have here a list of everything we grew out of here, okay? And it totals 106.5 pounds.
That's good though.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Now, it is the middle of November right now.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's cold
so
too,
it's cold.
Yeah.
It's the middle of November. So there's still a little bit more we have to do. So we still have some cauliflower and broccoli. We have kale in the garden. We're going to plant garlic to go through the winter. We have a couple of lettuces that are still going. So there's still a little bit more to get, but for the most part, we have gotten what we're going to get out of the garden.
Good deal.
So we started off, and here's the list of what we grew.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
Okay, so we got 5.5 pounds of radishes. There were 32 of them. Those are the very first things that we harvested. They grow really quick. We got a little over a pound of spinach. We got 0.7 pounds of turnip greens, 1.7 pounds of mustard greens, 3.7 pounds of peas, 1.1 pounds of green lettuce, and that's in the spring. 0.8 pounds of cauliflower, that was 1 head. 3.7 pounds of basil throughout the year. 3.8 pounds of carrots, there were 45 of them. 18.7 pounds of tomatoes, there were 158 of them.
Wow,
And then I also want to add that right before it froze here, I came out and I stripped all the tomatoes off the plants. So if, you know, fried green tomatoes in the South, that's because the tomatoes start producing again in the fall when it cools off, but they don't have time to ripen. So I got 6.1 pounds of green tomatoes. There were 54 of those that I took off right before the frost hit.
That's a good number.
4.8 pounds of onions. That was 16 of them. Half a pound of summer squash. We only got 2 of those, so that was kind of a disappointment. 8.6 pounds of eggplant, 25 of them. But our eggplant was a tree. Like I would not have chosen to grow this eggplant in such a small space had I known it was going to be this big. Okay, so 7.8 pounds of cantaloupe. There were 4 of them. 9.9 pounds of watermelon, 3 of them. Now, obviously, the cantaloupe and the watermelon were both really small for that. We had 20.8 pounds of cucumbers. There were 32 of them. We had 3 pounds of peppers, 18 of them. 8.4 pounds of sweet potatoes. There were only 6 of them, but they were gigantic. They were huge. Yeah, and then here in the fall, we harvested 0.6 pounds of lettuce and 1.3 pounds of romaine. So we had a couple things that just totally failed on us.
Let's talk about them.
So the green beans, we committed 6 square feet to green beans, and they didn't produce. They grew fine. They flowered fine. They didn't produce any beans. So I think we got like 2 little beans off of the 6 square feet. So that was a total fail for us here. In the spring, we planted purple lettuce with the green lettuce, and none of it came up. So we lost those.
We're going to check the seeds on that one.
Yeah, I think it might be bad seed on that. Swiss chard, we tried to plant that. We had a little Swiss chard that finally came up. It grew about this high, and 2 months later it died. So that didn't work either. And then potatoes. We were supposed to grow 3 square feet of potatoes in the fall, and they came up and then they just died back as well. I think They started growing about the time we had a lot of heat and humidity, and I think they got some pretty bad blight early, and it killed them off. So those are things for us that didn't work.
All right.
Okay.
Didn't work.
Yep.
That's all right, but we're experimenting.
Yeah, we're experimenting. So this was, 100 pounds out of a 4-foot by 8-foot plot of land. That's pretty good.
I think that's
anybody can fit something like this in their backyard.
Sure.
We have it in a raised bed. It'd probably be best to do it in some sort of raised bed because it kind of cuts down on the weeds, which, because it was so dense, we didn't have many weeds.
Yeah.
We have a few growing now because it's thinned out and our winter weeds are coming in. But yeah, so this isn't enough to keep you from having to go to the grocery store in all summer long, but there's a lot of stuff here.
Oh, it's plenty.
Yeah.
Definitely plenty.
Yep. Now, I want to, a couple of things. I talked about the watermelon cantaloupe.
Okay.
And we had them growing in here. We had them grow off
they were spilling out
into
this
the
way.
walkway here.
Yeah.
I don't think they did well in here because the watermelons were supposed to be 25 pounds each, and they were like 3 pounds each.
Yeah,
they were little, not big. So it probably would be best not to grow watermelons and cantaloupe in such a dense setting.
Okay.
The peppers they could have done better. The peppers that were in our in-ground garden over across the way, they did a lot better. We got really good, lots of peppers there. Right. But here the peppers didn't do as well. Part of that might be because the eggplant was shading them.
Yeah, I'm about to say, look how big this is.
I tried
competition.
I tried to space the garden so that the short stuff was on the south side and the tall stuff's on the north side.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the eggplant to grow to be the tallest thing in the garden, and it was pretty close to the north side. So, or pretty close to the south side. So that might have had something to do with it as well. So just because it's winter doesn't mean that we're done yet. Right. Now we are in Memphis, Tennessee. We're in zone 7B here. So you may not be able to grow some of these things farther north, but still growing. We have 2 plants of kale that we're going to continue to harvest through the winter. Yep, they look really healthy and happy. We still have cauliflower and broccoli going.
They look good.
Over there, and they're starting to head.
Yeah, I see some heads.
So we'll pick them.
Nice.
And we'll harvest the heads, and maybe we'll get some side growth and some additional heads later, assuming that it doesn't get super cold and kill them. Right. We also have the lettuce that we grew in the fall, which is right here. We got a little bit.
It's coming up pretty good.
Yeah, this I harvested already, but it's regrowing, so we'll see what happens there. I might get another harvest off of that. I left the romaine, and it's starting to regrow. Yeah, and there's one plant that isn't there. So, that may regrow, and we might get another harvest off of that. And then in the next little while, we're going to be planting some garlic. Yeah. And that will go through the winter. And it won't be ready to harvest until probably June of next year. Okay. But that's a good winter crop to just, keep your garden going through the winter, minimal maintenance on that.
Okay, where are you going to put the garlic?
Garlic's going to go right here. It's going to go where the watermelons were. We were just waiting for the frost to kill off the watermelons. Got it. So now that that's happened.
Oh, that has happened.
Now that that's happened, the garlic goes in. So, and a lot of this was set up to be a rotation. So some of these squares had 3 plants or 3 crops over the course of the year. Some squares only had 1, depending on how long the season for the crops were. Okay.
So I got to ask you this question. So how did we fare as far as diseases and pest problems?
Okay. Pests weren't bad.
Okay, not bad.
We didn't have much in the way of pest problems. You can see that the eggplant had something going on here, and I don't know if that's a bacterial leaf spot or if that was something that happened from a pest.
Probably flea beetles.
Yeah, it could have been flea beetles. Yep. Pest-wise, we really didn't have anything. There was a skink that lived somewhere right here, and one day I was out here and I heard some rustling, and they grabbed a praying mantis and was eating it. But so the skink, I'm sure, helped a little bit. For diseases, the beginning of the year was really dry, which helped. Really dry air, and so the tomatoes did very well. When it's got hot and humid, like our typical summer, the tomatoes got their usual blight. Yes. And so that's kind of to be expected. Other than that, everything was pretty normal. Something that is interesting to note is that we did have a squash plant, and though it didn't produce a lot, it was tucked in the middle of everything, and it didn't suffer from squash vine borer, which is something that happens frequently around here.
Yes, it does.
And so possibly in hiding with all the other plants and in the combination of smells and all that stuff, maybe the the adult squash vine borers didn't see it.
All right, Peter, so if people wanted to kind of keep track of what you did here over the years, how can they find that information out?
Yeah, so we kept a blog of what we did here, along with all of those harvest numbers and stuff. I have on there, so you can see, and you can even keep track as we continue on this. And you can go there, see where we had problems, when we planted things, when we harvested things, and kind of get an idea of how it worked, what the problems are we had when we sprayed, things like that.
Good deal. Good deal. So yeah, they can pretty much follow you, throughout the year. Okay, that's pretty good. Yep. Right. Well, we appreciate that information, Peter. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.